So welcome everyone to the Prosperous Napier Committee meeting for this morning. Just a reminder that this hui is being live streamed on the Council's Facebook page this morning. Could we all please stand for our opening karakia? Tu tawa mai I runga, tu tawa mai I raro, tu tawa mai I roto, tu tawa mai waho. Kia tau ai te mauri ora ki te katoa, Home e, hui e, tai e. Right, this morning we have apologies from Councillor Brown. Is there anyone else? No, thank you, Councillor Bowe for moving that and Councillor Price for seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And that is carried. Do we have any conflicts of interest this morning? No. No announcements by me. Do we have any announcements by management? No. Thank you. And I'll call for any minor matters not on the agenda. Nope. Great. Now, just a slight change from our agenda in regards to confirmation of minutes. You will have noticed that potentially we were looking at going into public excluded simply to approve some public excluded minutes. So in order just to keep things efficient, we've pulled it into the following resolution, that the minutes of the Prosperous Napier Committee meeting held on Thursday, 15th of May 2025, including the previously circulated public excluded minutes, are taken as a true and accurate record of those meetings. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, for moving and Councillor Taylor for seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Well, we will move into our first agenda item of the morning. We have our 6-weekly Treasury activity and funding update. I'd like to welcome Gary to present the paper.
When those minutes come into public.
Morena, Gary.
Good morning. For once, I've actually got something to say.
The floor is yours.
So, but there's been quite a bit going on, so I'll talk about that after initial bits. So, the purpose of this report is to update Prosperous Napier Committee on Council's Treasury activity. So, since the report was produced 2 weeks ago, total cash and deposits have fallen from 16.1 to 9.7 million, and this is due to some large capital payments that have been going out. So we currently hold 65 million of debt through the local government funding agency, and we have indicated that we'll be participating in the next bond tender on the 7th of July. So we're seeking 15 million to fund capital projects over the next 6 months. And as of yesterday, I received term sheets and signed those off, and so we're looking at $5 million for 8 years at 5.11%. and 10 million for 9 years at 5.22%. So if you compare that against your current mortgage rates, it's very good. So we're looking at taking advantage of these very low interest rates at the moment. We're compliant for all of our required lending ratios as well. So also outside the scope of the report, but this is just due to timing because a lot's been going on. We're in the process of establishing a $3 million credit facility with Westpac, and this is to provide access to on-call funds and improve our financial resilience. So, you sort of think back to recent cyclones and other things, to be able to have access to a larger amount of money is quite important to be able to support the community and get things running. We've also applied for eligibility with the local government funding agency to access climate action loans. So this will reduce the cost of borrowing for us by several basis points, and it will be retrospective to loans that we've taken out 6 months ago and any future loans, provided that we continue to meet the criteria. Wow. We're in the process of applying to participate in the LGFA's Green, Social and Sustainability Lending Program as well. To fund our civic build, and this will also result in cheaper borrowing for council. As we've reached 65 million of debt, obtaining a credit rating is now a viable option. It's actually quite a costly process, and it costs money to keep it going every year. So there is a sort of a threshold where it does make sense to do it. So this will both increase the level of debt we can hold and materially reduce the cost of borrowing for us. It's intended to have the project completed in the next 6 months. So I'll take the remainder of the report as read.
Thank you, Gary. Great update. I'll open for questions. No, I think the beauty of having these come to us every 6 weeks, even though there's a bit of a lag between when you write the report and when it comes to the table, is that, well, for me anyway, I feel really well informed as to our financial position and some of the actions that we're taking in order to minimise, I suppose, our responsibilities and liabilities when it comes to the debt that we're taking on. I do have just a quick question. So you've mentioned a number of opportunities that we are taking advantage of. I think there was the Green Social Fund. Can you tell us a little bit more about the retrospective nature of?
Sure.
Yeah.
So it also applies to the climate action loan. So these are, well, we'll sort of talk about both of them generally. So they're two streams of effectively green lending available through the local government funding agency. With the climate action loan, we've got a program in place to try to reduce our carbon output, that sort of thing. And so we do have an officer on board who's doing a lot of that work. And so being able to pull that data and demonstrate that, yes, we are actively trying to reduce it. This is the plan that we've got over the next several years and measuring it annually. It gives us a 2 basis point discount on our general lending. So what the Sustainability Committee do is they look at this and say, yes, you're eligible or not eligible, and they then look back at any lending you've got in place from the past 6 months, which is at least, I think it's 2 or 3 years maturity date that it's been applied. So you know, for instance, we borrowed in April, that would be eligible to receive this. And so with that, then they would, for our next interest payment, we'll get a 2 basis point discount on the interest rate. And then for, as we renew loans or take on additional lending, those general loans will also receive the discount. So for the GSS loan, that program is a little bit different. And so I think there's about 9 dot points, and this is a global standard, or nine options within that to try to measure or demonstrate some form of benefit. So you've got social benefit, you've got renewable energy, you've got reduction in greenhouse gases, efficient buildings, that sort of thing. So if you sort of think about the five-star building program. And that one is a little bit tricky because it does require some professional reports to be produced, which we have and so for Tiaka and the other sub-projects. With the civic build, for instance, we do have a lot of that information, but it's actually quite onerous to go through and put it all together. Again, that needs to be presented to the Sustainability Committee, and if they find that we are eligible, then the lending that is applied for that project will receive additional discounts as well. And given the lifespan of these projects is, you know, the building's supposed to be about 30 years. That means that whilst it continues to meet the criteria under that lending program, we'll continue to receive discounts on the lending. So it starts out small, but it is actually quite significant over the life of the asset. So it's certainly worthwhile applying for.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. Any further questions? No, I'm happy to move from the chair that we receive today's report. Can I have someone to second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'm happy not to speak to it. Would you like to say something?
Nothing to add. No.
Anyone else?
Good report.
Great report. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Item number 2, we have the retirement of the Category 3 voluntary buyout policy, and I'd like to welcome Richard to present the paper. Kia ora, Richard.
Thank you, through the chair. I think the retirement of the Category 3 policy kind of marks something quite special for us as an organisation, and I wanted just to play a little video for the prize that was won with Taituara, and which you're all part of. But before we do that, I think what I'd like to say is that the program went really well and really fast, and it only works when we're all collaboratively sailing in the right direction. And out of that, I think all of us can take pride in something that has been really terrific for our community, and very difficult circumstances to start off with for those people and everything. But because of the positive and collaborative attitude that everybody played, we've got a really fantastic result. So this is all a bit ad hoc because of the way this has happened, but I would like to play the video, and then I've asked Louise just to say a few words about the beginning of that process particularly, and then I'd like to go through, we've got 14 owners ourselves. I just wanted to go and reflect on each one of those as we go through this item before we close down the policy. I'm assuming that we will do that at the end of it, so if that's all right with you. Have you got that going?
February 2023, Cyclone Gabrielle devastates Hawke's Bay. Homes are destroyed and lives upended. For 167 families in Hastings and Napier, the future was suddenly incredibly uncertain. Their land was deemed too dangerous to live on. They needed answers and they needed options. The Hastings and Napier voluntary buyout program was born from that urgent need. A first-of-its-kind response, this locally led, Crown and Council-funded initiative provided a clear path forward. But this was only possible through the seamless collaboration between three councils: Hastings District Council, Napier City Council and Hawke's Bay Regional Council, each playing a critical role in making it happen. Designed to be fair, empathetic and efficient, the program delivered tailored support for each homeowner, guiding them through the process, helping them move on. The goal was simple but ambitious: provide certainty in an uncertain time and do it quickly. Within a year, 91% of property owners had accepted buyout offers, with 89% reaching settlement. None of this could have happened without the three councils all being on exactly the same page. The Regional Council's land categorisation set the foundation, while the City and District Councils worked together to create policies, funding structures and operational processes, all within just 3 months of the government's buyout announcement. To guarantee intergenerational safety, homes on Category 3 land had to be removed. The demolition process was handled with care, prioritising sustainability with 73% of materials recycled or reused. But it was also about dignity, ensuring property owners were given time to adjust and reflect, and, if they wanted to, say goodbye to their memory-filled homes. This program is a template for disaster recovery, already in use by councils in Gisborne, Nelson and Wairarapa. The three councils have shown what's possible through collaboration, setting up a system to help victims of disaster get on with their lives as quickly as possible.
Great. I would also, just before I just hand over to Louise, I just wanted to recognise Anne Bradbury and Catherine Hunt. Anne's now with the Regional Council, but both of those people did an amazing job as part of this process. But anyway, Louise, can you give us a few words?
Yeah, kia ora koutou. I think it's kind of timely to reflect as this triennium comes to an end, and obviously we will make a decision today about the Category 3 buyouts. I arrived with you pretty much after the cyclone, and one of the first things I did was step into this space, which was an experience. As we went through negotiations with the Crown, and then, as Richard has said, kind of designing something that had never been done before. I think not only should, I'm immensely proud of the team, they did an outstanding job, as did our partners, but also for this council. We asked you to make some really tough decisions with less than perfect information, which you required, trust in the officers and trust in our partner councils. So I think the outcome has been amazing when you think that we didn't have a template to work from. The fact that we are now closing this, and Richard will talk about the individual conversations that we've had with members of our community, and the fact that we're now in a position where we only have one outstanding, but they still have a route through this, has been quite phenomenal when you feel that we were doing this at a time when many of the people involved were still very much coping with the trauma of what had happened in the cyclone. So it's really just to acknowledge the team, but also to acknowledge this council in the leadership that you gave us during that period and the trust that you put in officers. So thank you.
Thanks. And just one of the pivotal decisions that you made was to help get the whole program going. I don't know if you recall that we had to go into a bit of a funding agreement to help get, I think, Hastings across the line because they were hitting their debt cap. And in terms of how we managed the implementation of well, the rebuilding of the bridges particularly was pretty crafty and a really important step, because we wouldn't have got the mandate to actually move without that. So give yourselves a pat on the back. It's good stuff. And I'll also reflect that when you look back at, and it's totally different, I know, but Christchurch and, you know, with central government doing the rebuild there and going through this process, it took them half a decade, and we managed to push ours out in 1 year. And some of our Auckland friends are struggling to do their bit as well. So it's an amazing result, really. So in terms of we had 14 individuals, and I just wanted to go through them. So our priority when we were first starting this was to deal with a 90-year-old couple. And so that happened pretty quick. That was the first, they were the first across Hastings and Napier. They were prioritised to sort out their particular one, and their house got relocated off very early in the process. That's Frank and Kerry Desborough. And they were part of 4 properties that the council had to go through a special process because they were slightly over the 2 hectare threshold. So they were 2.02, where in the interests of their mental health and everything, but also because it was within the margin of error, it made sense to apply a full buyout of that property, as well as Warwick and Patricia Marshall's and Michael and Marie Bakeman's, and that's where one of the lives was lost on that property. And then Irene Cahill, who has recently been in front of council for something else, but she and Gunnar Kashka. Gunnar was very injured during the cyclone, and he was in hospital for quite some time. All of those were resolved, and we ended up, so the houses were either demolished. Frank's one was, he built it himself, and it was, he was quite a unique guy, really, and he built it with engineering high spec. Anyway, that house got relocated. It was still, part of it was okay, the top floor. And we then, next door to that, there was Tamsin and Carol Heseltine, and they have, if you can picture going down the Esk Valley, there's a really beautiful villa that's down in those areas that where we've had those 4 properties, and it's still there because we were supposed to demolish it or try and relocate it, and the costs of relocation were really high. In the end, we ended up through a process selling the 4 properties next to that to the farmer next door, and he also has entered into an agreement with us to relocate that villa to higher ground, which is a really great result for that community, as well as everybody was pretty happy with that. So it's another little bit of a unique thing where we've got an agreement in council now between those 2 parties to make that happen. So the other ones, we had quite a few. So those 4 were the ones that we bought and we've on-sold again. We had one other one that we ended up buying because of its size. Who was that? David Hunt and Leanne Skreners, and they had a tiny little property that we've on-sold to NZTA. We had Annette Hibbert at Springfield Road. That was our one property on Springfield Road. She also had a really quite horrific time during the cyclone, which got carried quite a long way down that road during when that was going through. So her house got relocated, and she was part of a residential grant. John and Virginia Olsen. So John used to work with council in the parks team, and his place was affected by this, and he's got through with a relocation grant. That house has been demolished as well. And we had Richard and Jacqueline Cowles. That one took quite a while to get through, but that one's also been all finalised. The last one that is outstanding is at 382 Hill Road, and that one has been quite a tricky issue where the person in there, it was a will situation, so it was in probate, and it's also eligible for the Maori pathway. So the problems with that is it was very difficult to get, as you probably know, so if it's in probate, it takes a long time to be able to decide on anything. It just sort of sits there for about a year. And then not only that, but it's also that property was compounded by multiple children being party to the will. So you've got a big family, and then you have the Crown's offer coming through there because it was entitled to the iwi offer as well as councils. We have done our very best to put forward what council could offer in terms of that, and that's gone to that family. And we've also helped to try and help facilitate the negotiation process now that it's come out of probate. But we have alerted that family that the council's offer is now closed or about to be closed because of the funding agreement with the Crown. They also have they're still eligible. They've got eligibility for the iwi pathway, the Maori pathway, and our understanding is that's probably a more likely pathway at this stage, but they are fully aware that they needed to come forward if they wanted to accept our offer. So that's where our people were, and I think it's fair to say that the process was very difficult at the beginning, but as people moved through, you could almost see all of those people getting real benefit out of being able to move on with their lives as a consequence of what we've been able to do. Being able to get on with something after that trauma, I think, don't underestimate it. It's a big deal for all of those folk. So that was certainly a real privilege to be part of in terms of the team. So this item is really about closing the policy formally, and I think it is timely in terms of what we've achieved. It doesn't need to be open anymore, which is great, and that has coincided with the funding ending with the Crown as well. So with that, I'll hand it back to the Chair.
Thank you, Richard. I think that was really appropriate to go through and acknowledge each of those property owners, the people that were affected here and that we worked with, and also those of you, I suppose, at the coalface. It's lovely to acknowledge the work, especially at that very stressful and traumatic time as well. I will open for questions on the paper, guys. Councillor Bogue.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Congratulations, Richard and Bradbury and the team for this really successful outcome. I just have a couple of questions, probably things that maybe I should already know, but where do public buildings such as marae and business structures fitted in with the process? What happened there? And what is the kaupapa Māori pathway that's referred to?
So the public buildings, we didn't have any public buildings, so this was pretty much private land. Are you referring to a specific public
I
building?
was thinking about Marae.
Yeah, so marae are part of the Māori pathway, and the Māori pathway is just it's a different approach that is kind of, I think it's more the Papakāinga type, has a different way of dealing with it than the traditional kind of fee simple transaction that we have for everybody else. So they were, if there was sort of, if they were connected to the marae, then there is another government pathway that's facilitated. It's taken a long, long time for what that pathway actually was, and we're not really privy to any of that. So we've just been running our process because they're eligible for both pathways. It's not one or the other. They're eligible for both. They have to choose one as you're going through. But we were really running ours. You know, keep it simple. Everybody that's in our rohi that was eligible for a policy for this got an offer.
Okay.
Anyone else? No, well, I will go to the recommendation. So today we've got a couple of notes. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think the key part is that we approve the formal retirement of the Category 3 voluntary buyout policy, effective from today, the 3rd of July 2025. It is certainly a milestone, I think, for our people and our place. Can I have someone to move that? Thank you, Mayor Wise, and seconded by Councillor Crystal. Thank you. Would you like to speak to that?
Really just to add my thanks to those that have already been said for everyone that was involved in this process, with the respect that the property owners were treated with in incredibly difficult circumstances, and I think everyone should be very proud of how we worked our way through it, and I think very well deserving award to recognise that piece of work that was undertaken, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crystal.
It was quite emotive watching that and listening. It brings it all back, really. I think the February 14th changed all our lives, and we needed to show leadership and compassion, and I think that's what we did in this process. And I recall attending a meeting in Esther with the property owners early on. It was pretty traumatic, listening to their stories and dealing with their emotions and their personal they were having a lot of personal issues as well, and I still remember that quite, and it is, I guess, great to see this process happen and see them come out the other end and move on with their lives, because at that stage we were still almost building the plane as we were flying it. So very happy to second this, and let's hope we never have to enact this ever again.
Too true, Councillor Crystal. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Greig? Sure.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Just an additional comment. I'd just like to send appreciation to the staff, especially Richard and Anne, for upholding the principles that we agreed with at the beginning, which were acting in good faith, treating people with respect, working to achieve timely outcomes in a really difficult situation.
We've had 3 speak in favour of the motion. Does anyone want to speak against it? No, sorry. Okay. Well, therefore, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Richard. That's our last one. Over to our last paper for this meeting. We have the appointment and remuneration policy for directors of council-controlled organisations. Welcome to Emma.
Morena all. It's a relatively procedural matter. As we have worked through the appointment of the Board of Directors for Ahuriri Investment Management, we've been applying the Council's current policy, and through that have identified a couple of small items in that policy that don't quite work. So working through those, and sorry, I should say that, and so we've now undertaken a complete review of the policy, and in doing so used another council's policy to kind of benchmark and things. So we've got two recommendations. The first relates to clause 3.3.3, which is in relation to some additional competencies that have been set out for the Board of Ahuriri Investment Management, specifically those that relate to elected member directors. The current policy sets out that elected members must have served for more than 3 years. We are looking to write in the expectation that we've previously discussed with you around the fact that the elected member directors need to have completed the New Zealand Institute of Directors course, and we're putting a timeframe of 9 months on that. So if you haven't completed it going into the role, you've got 9 months to complete it after taking on the role, and that preference will be given to candidates who have served more than 3 years. Those recommendations align with the deferral of the elected member appointments until after the triennial elections to allow us to understand our pool of elected member candidates more clearly. That's the first recommendation. The second recommendation is clause 3.4.6, which relates to what we believe was a drafting error in the current policy. The appointment of directors will be made in publicly excluded meetings, and that's really to protect the interests and privacy of the candidate, and that we would then announce the appointment following that council decision. The current drafting requires us to take the decision to a publicly excluded meeting and then a public meeting, which is not productive for any of us. So those are the two drafting changes we're recommending. Any questions?
Thank you, Emma. We'll open for questions. Councillor Simpson, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, just a question. I actually went onto the DIO website last night to do some stuff, but I forgot to check. Can we just have confirmation? I assume you've checked that it is actually achievable, that if a councillor is elected in October, that they can actually, the number of courses offered, enable that to be achieved by the July?
No, I haven't actually checked that, to be honest. I can do that to clarify the 9 months as a reasonable time frame. I would think it would be, but I can confirm that.
Yeah, I just wonder as a default position through you, Madam Chair, whether the wording would be better at the first available opportunity.
I'm wondering whether someone does a quick check online, thank you to the CE for doing so, as to how, what the period of frequency is of those courses. My understanding is that they are.
6 to 8 a year.
They are fairly frequent.
Yeah. Every 2 to 3 months.
But I understand that you might want that confirmation, Councillor Simpson. While we're doing that, I'll open to anyone else that has questions. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you very much. So I just had some wording questions around the intention, particularly around 3.3.3. Yep. Where it lists the governance experience, it then says or in the case of elected members. And my thinking was you sort of want to consider those experiences listed in part 1, as well as the criteria you put in for elected members, especially where you may have multiple elected members vying for those roles. So to be able to give effective weight to that list of governance criteria. Is that the intention?
Yes, that is the intention. So the process for building a board is that you come up with a skills matrix and identify what the blended skill set around the table needs to be. And this is a commercially focused board, so there is a lot of commercial focus in that skills matrix. And we are definitely looking for elected members with a reasonable set of commercial qualifications, recognising that we may not get what we get from the corporate market or the commercial market. So I think we could change it to 8, but we might.
May I,
Yeah.
so could I suggest that you would not be adverse then to say first bullet point under, in the case of elected members, wording such as consideration is given to the governance experience listed above?
Yep.
And the other two
Yes, I think
bullet points?
I think that's a good solution.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, just one final point around the final bullet point where it says preference will be given to candidates who have served more than 3 years. Again, just a wording clarification, is the intention that it is preference will be given to elected members who have served more than 3 years on Napier City Council?
Yes.
So you would not be adverse to a amendment along those lines as well?
That's clarification of the intent.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan, could you fire those through to
I can do that.
to our governance team for inclusion in the final resolution? Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions, please. Are these positions going to be advertised, or will it be just a matter of the recruitment agency or whatever looking at who they know?
For the elected members or?
No, for the directors.
Yep.
You've already been done.
Sorry, just to clarify, the elected member directors or all the directors?
All the directors.
All the directors. So we have appointed the Institute of Directors to help us with the director search and help also build out what the board needs to look like. And the chair role was advertised, as well as the 2 independent director roles. Alongside advertising, there has been a lot of market search undertaken by the Institute of Directors. And it is the Institute of Directors doing that work, nobody closer in-house. So we're creating an arm's length environment.
Thank you. Will there be any preference for local directors?
There has been a lot of discussion amongst the nomination panel around that, and there is striking the balance between finding the right commercial skills and experience to achieve the outcomes we're seeking to achieve, with some local knowledge and experience. Where we will be, we're looking for 3 independent directors, and the general expectation is at least one of those will be local or have a very strong local connection. And then we will have our 2 elected member directors as well who will be local.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just noting that we have obviously had opportunity previously to contribute to the framework that has been used to go out to market for the independent directors and the independent chair. And this paper is specifically about the appointments and remuneration policy and drawing a special attention to the remuneration regarding elected member directors as well. Does anyone have any further questions about that? Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. It's a question about the preference for having an elected member who served 3 years. Is it okay to ask a question about that?
Certainly is. Go for it.
So just in the, say a situation happens where we get a councillor or on-councillor who has extensive financial experience, would they be considered even though they hadn't served for 3 years?
Yes, and that is part of the opportunity of opening up and creating a preference for serving. So we need to consider that part of the reason for having elected members is to bring the community voice and make sure we don't lose sight of whose the assets are and things like that. But we also need to achieve getting to a board that can achieve, as a blended skill set, that can achieve what we need to do. And that will be something the nomination panel need to consider as they weigh up the options.
So just to confirm, Emma, it doesn't preclude anyone who hasn't. No. It just
it's preference.
It's a preference.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just clarification, a couple of questions. The course that you, the candidates are expected to have completed, is that the 5.5-day
yes.
residential course?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. And can you give us an indication of what that cost is for that member?
There is, I'm looking at it now to confirm the frequency. So there are a lot of courses. For members, it's $10,500, and for non-members, it's close to $13,000.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so just confirming that for you, Councillor Simpson, it looks like they're monthly.
Yep, thank you.
Will be good. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Sorry, just further to Councillor Taylor's question, and I apologise if it's in the paper and I've glazed over it. Is the intention that that member would meet the cost of that training themselves, or possibly with a subsidy from the Professional Development Fund?
So we've previously met and discussed the remuneration for the Ahuriri board.
No, sorry, specific to the director's training.
Yeah, and so part of the remuneration that has been approved by council includes a $5,000 contribution to that course, specifically to that course for the elected members if they haven't yet completed that course.
Fantastic, thank you for that clarity.
Great. Anything further? If not, we'll turn our mind to the recommendation now. It's a little dispersed in our paper, so Carolyn's just working to pull it together for us.
I haven't got it done.
Oh, she hasn't got it done, but what we're going to do, so it's to approve the revised appointment and remuneration policy for directors of council organisations, and we are noting the clauses that she has highlighted in the paper for clarity, and we will include the wording changes that Deputy Mayor Brosnan has suggested as well. I'm sorry that I can't be much clearer and pop that up for you, but obviously we can, we have a second chance at it when we confirm minutes too. So I feel comfortable proposing that as the motion. Have I got someone to move that? Thank you, Councillor Simpson, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Simpson?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. We've prudently gone through each step, and I think staff are correct to have gone through the policy and come back to us with these amendments. I thank them for their diligence in that space. This is simply, again, another step of making sure that we establish our investment company in the best way.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just further to Councillor Simpson's kōrero, I think it's important that elected members retain governance oversight of these assets alongside our independent directors, and I think the framework that you've worked through to essentially elevate elected members with the appropriate skill set and governance training to sit at that level is really prudent. So happy to support. Thank you.
And Councillor Taylor, I saw you raise your hand. Would you like to speak to the motion as well?
No, it's fine, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Emma. And that draws to a close our Prosperous Napier meeting. We will go offline for a few minutes, just 5 minutes, and swap over for people and places. Thank you.